Welcome back to the Financial Freedom Show. My name is Rob Berger. In today's episode, I'm going to give you a complete update on both stimulus checks and federal unemployment benefits. We're going to cover four things. First, I'm going to look at missing stimulus checks. I know a lot of folks haven't received their payments. I'm going to tell you why that is and what you can do about it. Then we're going to look at the status of the next round of stimulus checks, currently set at $1,400. Then I want to cover the status of federal unemployment benefits and whether they're going to be extended, for how much and for how long. And then we're going to sort of wrap it up with my take on the likely outcome as all these issues work their way through Congress and the timing. So let's begin with the missing stimulus checks. And I got to tell you, the numbers on this they baffle me. So here's the deal. There are nearly 13 million people that have still not received the more recent $600 stimulus check. When Congress passed the $900 billion package, they actually gave the IRS a deadline. They said, look, folks need help. They need it now. We want these checks out by January 15th. We're now, January 24th, and 13 million people still don't have checks. Now, that's not to be confused with folks who still haven't received the first stimulus check. And believe it or not, there are 8 million people that still haven't received the first stimulus check from almost a year ago. In fact, the IRS recently said that, get this, there are hundreds of thousands of people who checks were mailed or debit cards were sent out and they haven't cashed them or they haven't used the debit card. Hundreds of thousands of folks. So the IRS isn't sure what happened. Did the checks and debit cards get lost? Did they get destroyed? They weren't stolen and used because, as I noted, the debit cards haven't been used, the checks haven't been cashed. So for those folks, the IRS is working to reach out to them. As for the 8 million people that still haven't received the first stimulus check, President Biden, as you may know, issued a flurry of executive orders recently. One of them was a directive to the Treasury Department. And he said, look, we need to get help to these folks as quickly as possible. So Treasury, I want you to come up with tools, including online tools that folks can use to expedite that process. So hopefully that will be coming out in the days and weeks to come. I do want to, though, focus for a minute on the 13 million people that have still not received the $600 stimulus check issued just a couple of weeks ago. And there's a couple of reasons that problems have occurred. One of them has to do with tax filing software. If you use, say, H&R Block or perhaps TurboTax, these software packages will set up temporary bank account numbers to receive the direct deposit before it gets funneled to you. Now, normally this is, it's sort of a transparent process. We don't even know what's happening. We get our refund, it's in our bank account. What do we care that it went through some temporary account number? The problem is it's the temporary account number that the IRS actually had on file. So what they tried to do was issue the $600 stimulus check to these temporary account numbers that don't exist anymore. And that created a big part of the problem as to why many of the 13 million folks didn't receive the stimulus check. Now, the good news is that the IRS is reissuing those payments, and they're going to do that automatically. That's what they said on the IRS website. In fact, if you go to the Get My Payment page, and you just Google Get My Payment IRS, they have a notice on this. I'm looking at it now, and they specifically say payments will be issued by mail for other taxpayers who didn't get a direct deposit because our records show their bank account is closed. So the downside is it's going to take some time, but the process is in motion. Now, what happens if you check the payment status, whether it's via direct deposit or check, and it says the payment went out, but you still don't have it? Well, there is a process you can follow. It's called initiating a payment trace, but the timing of this is a bit convoluted, so I want to walk through it here. You can initiate a payment trace through the IRS, and again, you can just Google initiate payment trace, stimulus check, irs.gov, and you'll find the page and the information. But let me share with you some of the timing of this. So what they say is, if you're going to get it via direct deposit and the IRS website shows that you should have received it, what they want you to do is wait 5 days since whatever the deposit date was, because they want to give some time. Maybe something could be delayed. But if those 5 days go by and you check with your bank and you still don't have the direct deposit, you can initiate a payment trace. Now, if you're going to get it by mail and it's going to go to a standard address, meaning you don't have a forwarding address, it's not a foreign address, but a standard address, you need to wait until February 24th. May not be what you wanted to hear, but that's what the IRS is saying. If your mail is being forwarded so that your stimulus check went to an old address and then it's going to get forwarded to your current address, you got to wait until March 10th. And if it's a foreign address, believe it or not, you got to wait until March 31st. But notwithstanding, those dates, you can initiate a payment trace if the payment tool says you should have received it and you don't have it and those dates or time periods have passed. Again, Google initiate payment trace, stimulus check, irs.gov. You'll find all of this information. By the way, you can even initiate a payment trace by phone. All right, now, the worst case scenario is you can, of course, claim the tax credit on your tax returns. That's true for the first stimulus check as well as the second stimulus check. They actually have a name for it, the recovery rebate credit, and there's a worksheet that you fill out. Now, one thing I'll warn you about, if you initiate a trace and that process isn't complete, it affects how you should record this on your tax returns. Now, the tax software should walk you through all of this if that's what you use, but you want to keep that in mind. Again, the details get a bit complicated, but they're all on the IRS website on specifically what you need to do. In fact, depending on which tax form you fill out, the IRS website even tells you the line number in the worksheet and what you should put there. So I'm not going to read through all of those details. You can find it on the IRS website, but I just want to make you aware of that. If you initiate a trace, the process isn't complete, and you decide to file your tax returns, you need to reconcile those two things. Now, if your taxable income is less than $72,000, there's actually free file. You can file your taxes through a program in the IRS for free. Again, just Google free file IRS. You'll find all of the information. Now, one last thing on tax returns before we move to the stimulus checks is that the IRS is not accepting returns this year until February 12th. That's a little later than normal. They normally begin accepting returns in late January, but because of all the issues in COVID and everything else, there's a bit of a delay. So tax returns, the first potential filing date that you can submit them is February 12th. All right, so we're going to kind of talk about the $1,400 stimulus check and the unemployment extension benefits together because they're both part of President Biden's recent proposal. He calls it the American Rescue Plan. It's a $1.9 trillion plan that he proposed just last week. And the first question is it going to pass? That's the big question, right? What some have said is it's a non-starter. The Republicans in the Senate will never approve it. And that gets into the question of budget reconciliation and can the Democrats pass it without Republican votes? I'm going to walk you through all of it. First, the provisions. It includes $1,400 stimulus checks. The logic behind that number was they wanted $2,000 checks. $600 just went out. We'll add $1,400 to it in this, I guess, third round of stimulus checks. It brings the total to $2,000. And they have included unemployment benefits. Now, as you know, under the $900 billion package, unemployment benefits were extended until March 14th. Yes, March 14th, 2021, at the rate of $300 a week. President Biden's proposal would increase that expansion of unemployment benefits from $300 to $400, and it would continue it into September of 2021. By the way, I've seen some reports that say it's going to be extended until December, but everything I've read says, no, that's not right. It's through September of 2021. Again, that's not the law. That's just a proposal that's been put forth by President Biden. Now, what will happen? Will these actually take effect? When? That all comes down to how the provisions work their way through the Senate. So here's the deal. Of course, it's got to pass the House and the Senate. The House is a no-brainer. It's controlled by the Democrats. In the House, you just need a majority vote. President Biden's plan is going to pass the House very, very quickly. All of the action is in the Senate. So here's the deal. As you probably know, after the Georgia runoffs, The Senate is split 50-50, Democrats and Republicans. Now, if there were a party line vote, 50-50, how do they break that tie? It's always the vice president. Of course, Vice President Harris is going to support the plan. So if it went to a vote today and there was a 50-50 tie, Vice President Harris would cast the tie-breaking vote and it would pass. However, in the Senate, the rules are a little trickier than in the House. With some exceptions, a bill can't actually get to the floor of the Senate for a vote unless 60 senators give it the thumbs up. That's just to get it to the floor for a vote. Once it gets to the floor, it just needs a majority. But to get there, with some exceptions, you need 60 votes. That you've no doubt heard of the filibuster, and that's part of that process. And as the bill stands now, it's never going to get those 60 votes. So President Biden and the Democrats have two choices. They can make changes to the proposal, scale it back, and try to get at least 10 Republican senators to vote for it. That's option A. Option B is to say, forget the Republicans. We're going to do this on our own. We can't get everything through that we want because of that 60 vote requirement. But we can actually pass some things without that 60 vote requirement. And it's in a process called budget reconciliation. Now, at this point, you may be saying, Rob, listen, I appreciate your effort here. I don't want to know all the Senate rules and everything. What's going to happen? Well, between those two choices, I think what's first going to happen is they're going to attempt to get some Republicans on board. To do that, they're going to have to scale back the $1.9 trillion plan. That's never going to fly. And what the experts on the Hill say is they might be able to reach a compromise somewhere around $1 trillion. Now, for the stimulus checks, here's the good news. The general consensus is that even if there's some bargaining back and forth and the plan is scaled back, the $1,400 stimulus check will be part of that plan. All right, that's the first thing. Now, what about unemployment benefits? The general consensus here is much less clear. There's not been a lot of, frankly, Republican discussion, at least publicly, on their views of the extension of unemployment benefits. I think what could happen is you would see an extension of benefits, but maybe not at the $400 level, maybe back at the $300 level. That's still up in the air, and probably not all the way until September, but for a shorter period of time. I do think, however, that some level of extended unemployment benefits will occur. Again, right now, those unemployment benefits expire March 14th. Believe it or not, I actually think that's good news in the sense that it will force the Senate to do something, because I don't think they want to see those unemployment benefits completely expire. Yes, there may be a few senators that do, but I think even among Republicans, they recognize that folks are going to still need some additional help beyond March 14th, given the economic crisis from COVID-19. So that's plan A. They could scale it back, still have the $1,400 stimulus check, and still have some level of unemployment benefits. That's plan A. Now, if that doesn't work, there's no doubt in my mind that the Democrats will use the budget reconciliation process. So let me just run through this quickly because it's important. So this whole process actually dates back to 1974. It was enacted by as part of the Congressional Budget Act. It actually hasn't been used a lot. Since 1980, it's only been used, I think, about 20 times, but some really important things. So, for example, some deficit reduction during the Reagan administration, welfare reform in 1996 under President Clinton. You recall under President Bush, there were two tax cuts, 2001, 2003. It was used then. It was used to amend part of the Affordable Care Act in 2010, and it was used to get the 2017 tax cuts under President Trump through. So it's been used in pretty significant pieces of legislation, but it's not the kind of thing that happens every single day, and there are procedural limitations on it. So, for example, it's used basically for spending, revenue, and debt limit. That's sort of where it's limited. In fact, there's something known as the Byrd rule or Byrd exception, named after Senator Byrd. And it says, look, you can't throw extraneous things into this. If you're going to use the budget reconciliation, it's got to be very narrowly tailored. What does that mean? It means that there are certain things in President Biden's current proposal that could not pass the Senate through budget reconciliation. A perfect example of that would be the provision he's included to set a federal minimum wage of $15 an hour, regardless of your own political views and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. That cannot pass the Senate through budget reconciliation. However, a $1,400 stimulus check could, and I believe the enhanced unemployment benefits could as well. So kind of here's the deal. If the Democrats sort of say, forget the Republicans, we've tried, whatever, we're not going to work with them, we're going to just do the budget reconciliation, the total plan that President Biden has put forth will absolutely shrink. It has to under the rules. However, we will see $1,400 stimulus checks, no doubt in my mind, and we would see a $400 expansion of the unemployment benefits at the federal level, and I think they would continue that through September 2021. And all of that could happen relatively quickly. If they say, no, we're going to work with the Republicans, I still think we'll see the $1,400 stimulus checks. I still think we'll see unemployment benefits, but probably scaled back, certainly in terms of time, how long they last, and maybe even in the amount. All right, so having said all of that, when in the world is all of this going to happen? Well, of course, we can only guess, but what the experts are saying is that we'll see something pass sometime between mid-February and mid-March. Part of that, again, ties to the expiration of federal unemployment benefits on March 14th. So I don't think it's going to happen any sooner. I'm sorry if that was not the news you wanted to hear. Part of it, frankly, is the Trump impeachment trial. That is occupying the Senate, and that will delay things. But frankly, I don't even think that's really the issue. I do think the Democrats and President Biden want to work with the Republicans, and I think some Republicans want to work with the Democrats. The question is, can they just reach an agreement that at least 60 senators can live with? We'll find that out over the next month or so. I think failing that, they'll use the budget reconciliation process. No matter which approach they take, I think we're seeing $1,400 stimulus checks and some extension of federal unemployment benefits, and that's going to happen sometime between mid-February and mid-March. That's our best guess. There you go. That's the update. You have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Be happy to help you out any way I can. And until next time, remember, the best thing money can buy is financial freedom.